Hey folks, this is Cindy. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with a card making video, and today we're going to be checking out the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero August 2017 card kit. Now, I know that this was last month and they already have a new one out, which is fabulous, by the way. And this one is sold out, but I'm always behind and I still wanted to share it with you because these kits are just amazing. Now, I have a piece of Ranger Tim Holtz Distress watercolor paper, and that's what I'm going to be working with today because we're actually not going to be doing any Copic coloring. It's going to be all about ink blending, and I have some Simon Says stamp masking paper, and I've used one of the dies out of the kit to make a mask, and I'm just marking the top of this because I want to focus on how this is specifically laid out on my card. There is this image here in the card kit that I want to make sure that kind of fits here in this little nook. So I want to make sure that when I lay these out on my card panel, lay the masking paper out on my card panel, that I get it straight and I get it in almost the same spot on both of them. I am going to be making two of these cards today because I'm going to be doing some heat embossing. I'm going to do one in silver and one in gold. So I want to make sure that they're fairly consistent because that will also help me as I make these cards. It just kind of streamlines the process and takes some of the thinking out of it. So I'm just lining this guy up because I'm going to draw a very light pencil line just so I have a little bit of reference because I'm not going to start with any stamping on these card panels to begin with. And our light source is going to be super duper important because we're going to actually use this mask as a base for how our scene is going to turn out. We're not going to use any pens, no markers, nothing. It's all going to be about the masking and how we blend into that mask. So it's just super duper light and it's only on one of them. I don't need them on both because I just need to have a point of reference. All right, now I have my mask applied to this. I really like the Simon Says stamp masking paper for this because it sticks really well, but it's still semi-permanent. I'm going to start with Broken China Distress Ink, and I'm going to start blending into that. I chose the Distress Inks because they are semi-transparent and they blend very well together, and I love that. That's exactly what we're looking for. You could use Distress Oxides or any other dye ink, and that would be fine. The problem with the Distress Oxides is they're opaque, and you're not going to get the same effect as you will with the Distress Inks. So I'm just going around that whole inner portion of that mask. And I'm just putting a light base coat on. I'm not completely covering up the whole centers. You can see there's still some white there because we're going to be going over this a couple times and we're going to work our way towards the center, but we still are going to concentrate on a light source. Now I'm going to be going in with chipped sapphire. Honestly, this should have actually been Faded Jeans, which is a little bit lighter, but I picked up the wrong one and you're actually going to see me kind of look at my ink blending tool here in a moment because I'm going to be like, oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Whatever. We're going to forge on, and I'm just going to be really careful as I apply this because the chipped sapphire is darker than the Faded Jeans. I don't want to go up too high. I want the bottom right side of this to be darker than the top left because that's where our moon and our little boy is going to go, and we need that portion of it lighter. So I'm just being super duper careful, but I am blending it in enough that I get into those little nooks and crannies around the mask because we're going to need that later, and you'll see what I mean. So now I'm going in with the Faded Jeans, and this one I'm going to take up just a wee bit higher where I would have wanted to had I started with this color to begin with. But I'm also keeping in mind that I don't want to go any further into that Broken China than I had initially applied. I'm using that as kind of a guide, so I don't go in any further than that because our light source is really important. So I'm trying to keep that in mind as much as possible as I blend this in. Now I'm going to bring in the Wilted Violet, and I chose the Wilted Violet because it has a lot of punch to it. It's that beautiful bright purple, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. And I'm going to put it on pretty heavy, although I'm still going to keep it pretty close to the edges of that mask, and I'm working that in really well into the nooks and crannies. You could use Dusty Concord. That would also work as well, but I really loved the vibrancy of the Wilted Violet. So now I'm going to bring in Black Soot, and yeah, we're going to put on some black because we're going to treat this black as sort of an outline on this masking. So when we take it off, you're really gonna notice it, because we're gonna have an area that is ink blended inside the mask, and then we're gonna do ink blending outside of the mask. And we need that darkness inside of it to make it look like they're two separate images. Now I'm working my way back out to the chip Sapphire, and as I'm working my way back out, I'm gonna start bringing it in closer and closer to the center, but I still want to keep enough of this light. So basically what I'm trying to accomplish here is just layering this up. Now I am back to my broken china. This was my lightest color when I started, and so I'm going to finish with it. And again, I'm keeping as much of lightness in that center as I possibly can. Now these look like a mess. You're probably looking at these going, holy cow, what just happened? That's okay. They're just masks. And that just shows us that we have a lot of color built up there, and it's going to be amazing when we pull those off, which I am getting ready to do. So now I have them all pulled off, and you can see where that black really shows up at the bottom of that, and that's perfect. It looks a little bit darker now, and that's okay. Now we're going to start doing our ink blending around the outside of that mask, and I'm going to be going into the same order as I did on the inside of the mask with the same colors. So all of this will look cohesive when it's done. I'm starting with the broken china, and I am just basically giving myself a guide for the rest of my ink blending, and I'm being really careful not to get too close to the edge of what would have been the inside of that mask. So now I'm bringing in the faded jeans, and I actually, when I started doing the ink blending, I was gonna make it look quite a bit more oval. And then as I started adding the ink to this, I decided to really concentrate on those corners instead. And as you'll see, I'm gonna build up most of the color through there. The other thing that I'm not too concerned about is you can see where my ink blending tool has left some streaks, and I'm sorry, on my ink panel. That's fine. We're not done. We're going to do the same thing on this as we did inside the mask. We're going lightest to darkest, and then darkest back out to our lightest. So a lot of this is going to get blended in. You're not even going to notice it. Plus, I have a few other things that I'm going to do with this as I finish it up. So again, you still won't notice it. Now, I totally skipped the wilted violet, but you can see that it's on there, and look how bright that is. I love that. And you can, it mixes beautifully with those blues and that black. I dig it. I think it's perfect. Now I'm adding the black soot, and for this I really am just going to concentrate around the four corners, because we don't want to cover up those blues and that purple. When we go back through, we're going to bring those back closer to the center, and we really want those colors to shine. Now I am doing the wilted violet because I'm working my way back into my lightest color, and I'm working out some of those streaks that I left, but also I'm trying to bring it in closer to the center of the card. Here we are with chip Sapphire, and I have this super duper sped up because this took a little bit of time. I certainly didn't rush it when I made it. I think all in all, it was about an hour, and I didn't want y'all to sit through an hour of me in ink blending, because that's like watching paint dry. So now I'm back at faded jeans, and again, it's the same thing. I'm working my way back towards the center, but look how much white I still have left on those clouds that were in a part of that mask. I'm making sure that I'm leaving that. Now that I'm back at the broken china, I'm still gonna leave some white. It's kind of the same principle when you're coloring with Copics or even coloring with colored pencils, that when you're trying to create the illusion of white, you leave as much white as you can and still convey that this is colored in. So now that I'm almost done, you can see that these are, it looks like there is this scene setting inside this night sky, and that was the purpose of the black. That really helped differentiate that there's two things going on here. So now I'm going in with the Hero Arts Blueberry Shimmer Mist. I believe this was from the June My Monthly Hero card kit. I really love this stuff. You can't tell on now in the video, but this stuff is like a legit blue. In fact, after I got done with this, I laid a tissue over it to help absorb any of the excess and help pull up some of those distress inks. And it was a beautiful, gorgeous blue. Now I'm using the gold shimmer mist. It looks like it's white in the bottle, but when it dries, it actually has this gold tint to it, and it's very beautiful. So I'm just kind of splattering some of this on both panels, and I really don't care where either one of them go. You could wait till you're done with all of the stamping and embossing, but I wanted these to look like they're actually underneath some of my images as opposed to sitting on top of them. So I decided to do this first. Okay, so now I'm going to start stamping my images. I'm starting with this cloud, and I have stamped it in Versamark ink, and I'm going to be heat embossing this in Hero Arts Gold and Hero Arts Silver embossing powder. And before I did that, I made sure to treat both of my panels with an EK Success anti-static powder tool. Also, something to keep in mind is these panels are still kind of damp. I did take my heat tool to them before I started embossing, but I could see where some of them were some areas were still kind of damp. So I just brushed those off with a dry paintbrush. Okay, now I'm stamping my little guy in the moon, and I'm using Hero Arts Black Dye ink. I don't get to use this ink very often, and I always forget how black and crisp it is. I love it. And then also because I'm using the Misty stamping tool, and because I'm not getting solid stamping the first time, I can just stamp over the top of it again, and now I have this beautiful, crisp, solid image. I love it. And this is going to be the only thing on this card panel that I actually use a colored ink for. Everything else is going to be embossed in their respective colors of gold and silver. I did decide to bring in my Spectrum Noir Clear Overlay glitter pen because I want this moon to have a little bit of oomph to it. So I'm just coloring this in. Just the moon in. I'm not coloring in the little boy at all. And something to keep in mind, folks, is that if you're going to do this, make sure that it's good and dry before you do any more heat embossing. The shimmer pen does have some moisture in it, obviously. So if you don't wait for it to dry, or if you don't set it with your heat tool before you start doing any more embossing, your embossing powder will stick to it. Now, I don't show you through every step, but I do, before I do any more images on my panel, I do make sure I go over it one more time with my EK Success anti-static powder tool, just to make sure that nothing's going to stick, that I haven't knocked any of that off. I'm still kind of worried at this point that those distressed inks haven't completely dried inside of the paper. So I don't want to ruin any of this by having loose powder stick where I don't want it. So now I'm just going to add some stars to the bottom of that little guy's fishing pole. There is a bigger star in the stamp set that you could use, but I thought that having 3 of them on each one would be super cute, so I decided to do that. Plus, there's also a lot of texture going on as it is with the cloud, and I'm going to be adding some stars. Plus, there's the texture of all of the spray that I put on there. So I thought that these solid little stars would be perfect for this. And then later on, as I finish this up, I'm going to take a black pen and I'm going to connect these stars. So it looks like the fishing line goes all the way down to the star on the bottom. I actually did a test run on this card to begin with, or on this layout to begin with, and I did all of the images in black. I think it probably turned out okay. In fact, I probably like that one better than I like the silver and gold, but I really wanted these cards to have a little bit of oomph to them. So I thought that the silver and gold would turn out better. So I actually didn't end up recording the one in black, but I would really love to see somebody give this a try in the black and maybe not do all of the ink blending around the outside of our masking. Maybe just do the masking in the center and then all of the images in black. That could be really cool too. Now I'm going to start stamping some of my stars. I already have them laid out on my MISTI. It took me a few minutes. There was no point in leaving this in the video. So I have them loaded up on my MISTI stamping tool. I do have this one corner here masked off because I want to make sure or make it look like these stars are coming up from the inside out. And you'll see what I mean by that here in just a moment. The other thing about using a MISTI stamping tool is, again, if you don't get perfect images, you can stamp over it again. Now, I made sure that I got into those nooks and crannies of this mask on the gold one, but I wasn't, not so much on the silver one, but that's okay. You can't really notice it. Not a big deal. I also masked off a portion of the moon because I wanted it so these stars look like they weave in and out of the moon. Now, I did make a mistake. I didn't take off the masking on the moon before I heat set the heat embossing, and it left some sticky residue on my moon that I couldn't get off. So I just took Versamark ink, Hero Arts clear embossing powder, and I went over the top of this guy and heat set that, and you can't even tell. What you can tell is because I had heat set that silver and gold embossing powder on the moon twice, it kind of made the stars on the moon bleed a little bit. No big deal. We're not going to worry about it. Moving on. Now I'm taking Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment ink, and I'm using some of the stars that are in the stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp them randomly all over the panel. I speed this up. It took me a few minutes to kind of eyeball where I wanted them. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that I wanted to keep in mind as I stamped these is I wanted to make sure that some of them were stamped off the panel. If you want to make your scene look like there's more than just 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches to it, then stamping a portion of your image off the panel helps give the eye the illusion that there is more. There's more going on out there. We just can't see it. That's always a super quick, super easy trick whenever you're making a card or a scene, or if you're trying to build something out but you don't have the room for it, just stamp a portion of it off the panel. The eye is going to do the rest. All right, so I have both of these done. I'm not going to do anything else to them. I played around with embellishments for a while. I thought about adding more embossing to them. The card or the My Monthly Hero kit that goes, all of the stuff that goes in the My Monthly Hero kit for this, it has some sequins in it that are super darling. I just thought, yeah, we're gonna call it a day. I wasn't super happy with anything else that was going on, so that's it. So these were a really great way to build up another scene where we didn't have to do a lot of masking. We didn't have to break out any of our markers, just a few colors and a little bit of heat embossing, and we have ourselves a card. Do be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as head over to my blog for more details and links. As always, I hope you enjoyed my cards today. Thanks again so much for stopping by. Until next time.